The dark secret of Willow Creek. Imagine driving through the endless stretch of open road, nothing but the hum of the engine to keep you company. Night falls, and you find yourself stranded in the middle of nowhere. A small town on the horizon offering safety, or so you think. But as you step into this charming, quiet place, something feels off. The smiles are too wide, the streets too quiet, and the eyes. There's something wrong with their eyes. You're not just lost. You've walked into something far more sinister. Welcome to Willow Creek, where no one ever leaves. The storm had come out of nowhere. One moment, Jacob was driving under clear skies, and the next, the heavens had opened up, unleashing a torrential downpour that made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. His GPS had stopped working miles ago, and the gas gauge had been dangerously close to empty for far too long. Relief washed over him as he spotted the flicker of lights in the distance, a small town nestled between the hills, seemingly untouched by time. Willow Creek, a weathered sign announced as he rolled into the town. It was quaint, almost charming in a vintage postcard kind of way. Jacob parked his car in front of the only visible building with any activity, a diner, its neon sign buzzing weakly in the rain. As soon as he stepped inside, a warm wave of nostalgia hit him. Red vinyl booths, a jukebox playing soft country tunes, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the room. The handful of patrons inside all turned to look at him simultaneously, their faces lighting up with unsettlingly friendly smiles. "Welcome, traveler. Looks like you got caught in the storm," said the waitress, her voice overly cheerful as she poured him a cup of coffee without asking. Jacob nodded, grateful for the warmth, but something about the place gave him pause. The town felt like it was stuck in time. There were no modern touches, no smartphones, no flat-screen TVs, just rotary phones and vintage decor, as if the past 50 years had never touched Willow Creek. He decided to ask about lodging for the night, and the waitress directed him to a small inn just down the road. "You'll love it here," she said, her eyes gleaming in a way that made his stomach churn. Everyone who comes to Willow Creek does. The innkeeper, an older man with deep wrinkles and piercing blue eyes, greeted him at the door. His hospitality was as unnervingly warm as everyone else's, but Jacob was too tired to question it further. The room was small but clean, the bed soft enough to lull him into a deep sleep almost immediately. But the dreams were dark. He saw flashes of the townspeople gathered in a circle, their faces twisted in some grotesque combination of joy and malice. They chanted in a language he didn't understand, their voices low and rhythmic. In the center of the circle was a shadow, a figure with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through his soul. Jacob woke with a start, heart pounding in his chest. The room was freezing, despite the warmth from earlier. His breath came out in visible puffs as he hurriedly dressed and made his way downstairs. The inn was eerily silent, as though everyone had simply vanished. Stepping outside, Jacob noticed the town was shrouded in an unnatural fog. He could barely make out the shapes of buildings through the mist, and the silence was deafening. He walked back to the diner, hoping for answers, but it too was empty, save for the waitress, who stood behind the counter, still smiling. "We were wondering when you'd wake up," she said, her tone too sweet for the words she spoke. "What's going on here?" Jacob demanded, backing toward the door, but the door didn't budge. It was locked. "Let me out!" The smile never left her face. "You're not leaving, Jacob. No one ever leaves Willow Creek." He turned around to find the diner patrons, the innkeeper, and several others standing behind him. Their eyes, once human, were now glowing the same unnatural light he had seen in his dreams. Their faces began to shift and stretch, skin tearing away to reveal monstrous forms beneath. Horns, claws, scales. They were no longer people. They were something else entirely. Jacob's breath hitched as the realization set in. This town wasn't just hiding a secret. The people weren't people at all. They were something else, something ancient and hungry. He bolted for the back exit, only to find the door sealed shut. The walls seemed to close in around him, the air thick with the scent of decay. As the creatures advanced, their voices blending into that same low, rhythmic chant from his nightmares, Jacob felt his body seize with fear. Suddenly, the floor beneath him gave way, and he was falling, plummeting into a dark underground chamber. He landed hard, knocking the wind from his lungs. As he gasped for air, the chanting grew louder. echoing through the cavernous space. In the dim light, he could see strange symbols carved into the walls, symbols that pulsed with an unnatural glow. And then he saw it, the shadow from his dream. It towered over him, a grotesque figure of twisted limbs and glowing eyes. Its voice, deep and guttural, filled his mind, drowning out his thoughts. "Welcome, Jacob," it whispered. "You are home." He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing he saw was the shadow descending upon him, its cold, clawed hand reaching for his throat. The next morning, the sun rose over Willow Creek as it always did. The storm had passed and the town bustled with activity. The diner was full of smiling patrons, laughing and chatting as though nothing had happened. A new traveler pulled into town, car sputtering as it ran out of gas. He stepped into the diner, drenched from the rain, and was greeted by the same warm, too-wide smiles. "Welcome to Willow Creek," the waitress said, pouring him a cup of coffee. "You'll love it here. Everyone who comes to Willow Creek does."